Okay. Can you see it now?
We can, yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Sorry for delay. So we'll run through the agenda items. I'm trying to welcome you and start sharing here. And then we'll talk about the guidance, the method notes, and we send it to everybody who registered for this event, and we'll share in the link as well, just in case. And of course, it's readily available for download. Then we'll have a quick maybe Q&A to kind of break the cycle of presentations, and we'll welcome questions if you have about the method itself. And we'll give a couple of case studies from a CGIAR context by colleagues, and then open floor for subsequent discussion. Thank you. So for those of you who might be new to CGIAR, CGIAR is a global research partnership for food secure future dedicated to transforming food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis. And the reason why I'm introducing it is to explain in which context use of SNA is happening and what are the case studies around it. And CGIAR is a network of relatively independent CGIAR centers, and you might have heard some of them individually or in relationship to actually CGIAR, and they're all located largely in the global south, in Africa and Asia, South and Central America, except one center, IFPRI, which is located in Washington, D.C. So it is in this context, of course, that social network analysis has been useful in looking and evaluating relationships between partners. CGIAR's programming is guided by the research and innovation strategy, and research and science are the two kind of anchors of the research part of the portfolio. And it was until last year delivered the portfolio through 3 science groups and previously through platforms as well. And those are important because they will be coming up in the presentation by colleagues. For the space of evaluating and monitoring in CGIAR, this visual kind of provides the guide to understand where there is research preparation, evaluation, assessment of the research proposals, then where research happens and evaluation of it, of research for development and monitoring, and what guides the MEL efforts in CGIAR. We're highlighting the evaluation policy and framework and the tool, the SNA guide that you've all received access to. This is a standard evaluation policy kind of presentation and evaluation framework. And it was really important here is what is circled is that in addition to standard OECD DAC criteria, CGIAR uses evaluation criterion of quality of science. And in it, the scientific credibility and legitimacy are at the core. And again, to that is the link to SNA method. The SNA method note was issued to support the guide to evaluating quality of science and research in CGIAR. And it maps from evaluation policy and framework to the guidelines and to the methods notes. For the criteria that we use in evaluating quality of science, I highlighted again just as a framing particular research design, which needs to happen with partners inside CGIAR and externally, and the process of managing research for development. There is words partnership there very centrally. This is just information on some of the publications related to our presentation and QR codes on the SNA guide and partnership summary where some relevance was found. And there I give floor to Bia, where she will actually get us on the technical footing of this presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Svetlana. So I will very briefly just go through a general idea of what social network analysis is. Of course, it's a very broad and complex concept. that we won't have time to go into all the details here, but as Svetlana said, you're welcome to check our methods note, where we have a lot more detailed definitions on some of the concepts that we'll be touching upon here. But this is just to give you a flavor of what is social network analysis, or SNA, as we'll call it for the rest of the session. So you can go to the next slide, please, Svetlana. So SNA is both a theory and a method. So it's a way of understanding society and talking about how different people or different entities, institutions, organizations, individuals relate to each other and interact. And it's also a method where we run this type of analysis to answer different types of research questions. So here, in this context of research for development, we look at SNA to understand different types of social ties, so different social relations and how they happen in various development environments. And what we want to understand, the connections between individuals or organizations as being an essential element of how different knowledge is exchanged, how resources are shared, and how collective action towards transformation happens within a social structure dynamic. Next slide, please. So in terms of a definition, essentially, social network analysis is examining the relationship among or between actors. And these actors can be individual people, it can be institutions, it can be a relationship between these people or institutions and places or items or events within a given social structure. So we have a particular context, and we want to understand how different entities are interacting within that context. This is where we can apply SNA. And as a method, it uses networks and graph theory to visually represent these actor dynamics. So here we're able to map the presence of these nodes or these different entities within the scope of our research. And we are looking then at how we analyze these different connections. So what are the relationships among these entities, and how can we visually represent them? How can we distribute them as a network graph? And SNA is applied across different sectors to understand how people or institutions behave, how they interact. Also, interest is a very interesting method to look at how information flows across different entities, and also to look at the success of initiatives and treatments. So how are interventions disseminated across different actors? Next. Next slide. Yeah. So the key concept, the main let's say the main concept in SNA is where we have our nodes, so our entities, the different objects or the different institutions that we are assessing, and there's a line connecting these entities when they have a relationship. So if a node is connected somehow to another node, then we have an edge, and we have a relationship between them. And these relationships could be represented through different communication patterns. So whether a node is speaking to another node, or whether a node is engaging with another node. We can look at information exchange. So whether a node is providing information or disseminating information to another, and then also look at other different types of interaction dynamics. Does node A know node B? Does node A provide services to node B? Those are the kinds of relationships that we are looking at. Does a particular community interact with another community or go to a certain place? So there's many different ways that we can represent these nodes. They can mean many different things, and the relationships can also be represented in various different ways. So the way that we will identify, who are our nodes, or what are the relationships that we're looking at, depends on the research question or the development intervention that we are trying to assess. The idea here is that we can represent these relationships or these dynamics as a network to understand different types of stakeholder behavior. But the key point here in SNA is that we can try to look at some patterns that might be missed by traditional research. You can conduct several interviews about people's experiences with an intervention, for example, but to really understand who has been included or who has been excluded, you try to think of an SNA approach to really map to really map the different interactions between people in an intervention. Next slide. In terms of the applications of SNA, it's as a theory and a method, it's been applied in various disciplines. We have SNA being applied in sociology, in psychology, in political science, in public health, in epidemiology, for example, in demographic studies. These are all several fields that have leveraged on SNA as a methodology. And the idea here is that by representing these social structures as networks, we can identify both local and global network traits. We can identify who are the key influential actors and their roles. There's several ways that we can look at network metrics to identify the role of different actors within a network. And we can identify whether the relationships, the nature of the relationships, are they one-way relationships? Are they two-way relationships? Is there an influence, are there people or institutions bridging different actors in our network? So looking at all of these different metrics, we can try to discern, how are our entities interacting. And the idea is that through SNA and through the identification of these communications or interaction dynamics, we can support policy design, we can support program implementation, we can identify how communities are collaborating, and we can evaluate also the influence, the reach, the partnership development of an intervention. Next. In terms of how we apply it to the evaluation context, we are trying here to understand specifically, and this is also within the CGIAR context of how SNA has been applied, trying to understand the relationships among different stakeholders in a project or a research program. We're trying to understand the relationships between stakeholders and different types of events, and between different types of entities and partnerships that have been developed in some of our interventions. Also, by using SNA from the beginning of project design, we're also able to understand how networks evolve over time. So if we can develop a benchmark network of how things are before an intervention, and then how this network is evolving over time, and adjusting the research questions to embed SNA within the entire monitoring and evaluation process, we are able to then use SNA to also adapt strategies of interventions to support the enhancement of partnerships that are necessary for project effectiveness and to improve a general overall performance monitoring. The next slide, please. Just to conclude on this very short intro to SNA, and we're happy to answer more technical questions that you might have. But from our perspective, we believe that SNA is a very powerful tool to understand different types of social structures, actor networks, and communication networks. It's an interesting tool in evaluation to identify who are the key actors and what are the relationships happening within development interventions. And we believe that SNA doesn't answer all the research questions, but it's a very interesting approach to supplement field data to assess the development or the effectiveness of different interventions. And we believe that through SNA, we can reveal different gaps and different opportunities in these interactions that can help improve community health, improve resilience, improve well-being, and generally identify how interventions can be more effective by identifying how the stakeholders that we're interested in are behaving within are interacting with our intervention. So I'll stop here for some initial questions that folks might have on SNA, and yeah, we're happy to answer either through the Q&A box or through questions here in the chat. Please go ahead. So while people are thinking here about some questions, I will hand over to my colleague Shweta. If you have any other comments here, Shweta, on this initial intro that you want to highlight, please go ahead.
Well, Bia, thanks. I think if there are no more questions, or the folks are still thinking, we can probably straight away head on to walking them through a little bit about how SNA has been used in different kinds of evaluations to give them a flavor, and then probably as we move on, they may have more questions coming in.
Sure.
Yeah. So can we move on to next slide if there are any questions? Yeah. Okay. So great. So we will now walk you through a set of evaluations that were held at CGIAR, and we will look at how SNA was used in those evaluations. The first beginning with the GeneBank platform evaluation, which was a deliberate attempt on part of CGIAR. So SNA was a part of 2023 evaluation of the GeneBank platform. The whole purpose of the evaluation was to support institutional learning of CGIAR and crop trust and provide evidence on efficiency and effectiveness of the platform. The evaluation exercise aimed actually to identify good practices and lessons for the GeneBank initiative. And the evaluation approach and data collection was followed a mixed method design. So it leveraged both qualitative and quantitative data from primary and secondary sources to understand the key evaluation questions, understand operating environments, and also track certain programmatic assumptions. 8 key evaluation questions were framed along with 5 evaluation criterion: relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, coherence, and added value. And these were used to understand the sustainability of the initiative and to take it forward from there, that what has been the impact of the GeneBank platform. Next slide, please. So SNA was used to evaluate the GeneBank platform. It was part of one of the methods that was used to evaluate the platform. And the key objective was to identify and delineate some of the main stakeholders and study the relationships between those stakeholders and how they are interacting on the CGIAR GeneBank platform. Now, the key objectives, as you can see, of using SNA was to identify these partners and users within the GeneBank platform, starting from a period of almost 4 years, from 2017 to 2021, to identify and assess the strength of those relationships between these key partners and the users, and to also recognize how information is flowing within the GeneBank platform. So there was an analysis of the 186 responses that were received using the questionnaire, and filtering out led to the use of nearly 122 responses, which were used to feed into the main data to visualize how communication is flowing and what are the key network characteristics. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there are basically 4 key graphs or sociographs that came out. One of the first ones talked about or gave us an understanding of how is the GeneBank professional network looking like. So of the 2,289 partners that were exactly collaborating on the different initiatives through this GeneBank platform, this actually had 63 active nodes, and this showcased a very well connected structure. Now, the network exhibited a very high average degree and a graph density, which actually spoke at length about the interconnectivity that was happening amongst the members of the CGIAR partners, National Agricultural Research Systems, NARS, and from the non-CGIAR partners, Taraba State University and University of Cambridge had the most incoming connections. Next slide. Yeah. Another sociograph that came up was between the relationships between the partners and their interactive patterns that emerged. So of the 32 partners that we've already talked about, who were actually interacting over the platform for their daily day-to-day activities, on an average, each partner was seen to interact with nearly 15 other partner organizations on a regular basis. The findings further revealed that these partners had more of outside linkages. Now, this actually helped us to understand that who could possibly act as a broadcaster of the information for CGIAR. There is a comment. No, please go back to the last slide.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So this sociograph actually helped us to understand that who the broadcasters of the information were. And it was found that Alliance Biodiversity International, Africa Rise, and CIFOR, along with ICRAF and Annamalai University, were the key broadcasters who could actually be used to disseminate information on any of the key innovations that were happening. The figure is, as you can see on the screen, is also highlighting how well the internal and external partners were connected. And just move on to the next slide. Yeah. So when we look at the flows of information within the CGIAR GeneBank platform, it was found that the Biodiversity International CEAT and Africa Rise were perceived to be significant partners. And during the evaluation, let me just take you a little back and just flag that the SNA questions or the data was used to also understand who are the key partners to whom there are the people are communicating regarding the funding flows, regarding daily day-to-day activities, and any help needed to support the initiative. And it was found that Biodiversity International, CEAT, and Africa Rise were the significant partners, and the major funding related queries routed through CGIAR and Crop Trust and Biodiversity International. Now, amongst the non-CGIAR partners, institutions, Malaysian Agricultural Research and Development Institute, Malaysian Agricultural Research Development Institute, Jimma University, and Kemin Seed Universities and McGill Universities were some of the key non-CGIAR partners. So out and out, it was found that the universities, who were the think tanks, were coming up, were actually and came out to be one of the significant partners who could actually help in disseminating the information from the CGIAR to the users, to the end users, who the farmers were. Move on to the next slide. So what are the certain recommendations and suggestions that came out from using SNA into the GeneBank platform evaluation? It came out that CGI should strengthen its relationship with the National Agricultural Research Systems, NARS, within each country if they want to reach out to the end users, which are primarily the farmers. Secondly, while CGI partner organizations are playing an important role in conservation and policy modules, the non-CGI partners have actually a larger role to play when it comes to the use module. And lastly, the leadership, whether real or perceived among the strategic partners, can actually help establish a hierarchy that can help these initiatives to strengthen their on-ground network and actually work and enable more cost-effective interventions. Yeah, next slide. So some quick, I saw some comments in the chat box which were talking about how do what are the main uses of SNA, or what are the limitations. So we will be catering to those questions towards the end, but quickly taking it from our understanding of using SNA into the GeneBank platform, there are certain key lessons that we understood as a team. One was that when we look at key partners and users within the GeneBank platform who are actually truly essential in achieving the organizational objectives very effectively and efficiently, funding for these projects need to be optimized through the influencer group that actually could be understood better when we conducted this SNA, right? Then moving on to the fact that we would want to connect to make, in order to be more relevant and cost and efficient, we need to reach out to the end users. Again, in that case, the influencer groups could be a key anchoring point who could be utilized, or whose potential can be utilized to reach out to the end users. Now, SNA also helps us to understand the socio-institutional structures, the actors in the knowledge flows. But certain limitations which we faced was a limited participation, which actually could have actually furthered helped us in furthering our understanding. So this was one of the key limitations of using SNA into the GeneBank platform evaluation. Then the online survey reached out to only small and specific groups, which restricted our detailed analysis. So probably a face-to-face or offline studies could have actually helped us reach out to the larger segment of the population. Then thirdly, beyond survey limitations, SNA faces the challenges with data availability, model assumptions, resources, and inference accuracy, which needs to be taken into account. Most respondents were actually CGIAR affiliated researchers. So broader inputs could have been taken from stakeholders like farmers and academicians, who could actually have enriched the insights further. And lastly, the survey aimed to explore interactions and knowledge exchange, but limited time, because the time duration for the evaluation was a limited one. So it actually hindered an extended data collection. So those were certain challenges that we faced as a team when we were trying to integrate SNA into the GeneBank platform valuation. Move on to the next slide, please. Okay, another example was when we tried to locate, when we tried to evaluate the three CGIAR science groups, and we tried to integrate the use of SNA into the evaluation itself. So the three groups, systems transformation, genetic innovation, and resilient agri-food systems, are the three science groups that have been constantly working to enhance, to actually achieve the organizational goals of CGIAR. And the 5 impact areas where they have been working are nutrition, health and food security, poverty reduction, gender equality, climate adaptation and mitigation, and environmental health and biodiversity. Now, to evaluate how well these groups have been functioning and to understand the role of the partners at large, we wanted to use SNA. So to understand collaboration, how collaboration of the external partners like government, universities, national agricultural research systems have been, we used SNA. Then also to establish and understand the type of relationship, what kind of relationship exists between the partner organizations and the CGI centers, and also to establish relationship among the participants who were actually a part of the study in the different science groups or as per the action areas where they have been working. And we also tried to map the primary and secondary initiatives from the CGI internal staff. Move on to the next slide. Yeah. So one of the first sociographs that came out when we tried to collect the data and visualize the partnerships that were existing during the science group evaluation project. The network showcasing the relationship among participants in the science groups consisted of 14 nodes and 91 edges. It was found to be, so on an average, each partner was actually reaching out to 6 other partners in their day-to-day functioning. Move on to the next. Similarly, the external partners and their relations, again, 8 external partners that clearly emerged from the evaluation included the research universities, NGOs or international NGOs, international organizations, national agricultural systems, and there were certain private and government organizations also. So out and out, the network was found to comprise of 8 different nodes, and on an average, it was a moderately connected network, which actually spoke at length about the fact that we need to enhance cross collaborations within these networks. Move on to the next. Also, the study tried to establish the relationship among partner organizations based upon the phase or the partnership with CGIAR, wherein it was interestingly found that each partner connected with 6 other partners, which showcased that yes, there is strong collaboration, which is driven by what kind of partnership they are holding. And top engaged entities came out to be the research organizations or universities, which had the highest engagement across all the phases, whether it is design, implementation, or deployment of any of the initiatives by CGIAR. And this was followed by the private sector and the public sector organizations. Next. Now, if you can see the dense network on the screen right now, which talked about the connection between the primary and the secondary initiatives of CGIAR staff, the network of the CGI staff, which was engaged in primary and secondary initiatives, actually consisted of 30 nodes or active actors, and which has a whooping linkages of nearly 435. Now, an average degree of this network is 14.5, which indicated that on an average, each initiative is interacting actively with at least 14 other initiatives. Now, of all these initiatives that you can see on screen right now, the Western and Central African food systems, agricultural agri-food systems, and sustainability health diets were the most connected initiatives of all. And the network density of 0.5 of the sociograph actually helped us to understand that there is still scope of further enhancing these cross collaboration, since the network was found to be only moderately dense, right? And therefore, there is a huge scope to enhance these partnerships. Next slide. Yeah. Lastly, there was also an attempt to understand the social network of the external partners post 2022. and it revealed that a moderate relationship between partners and CGI centers existed. The survey showed that different partners engage in CGI different initiatives at different stages. The sociograph included 8 key partners as already defined in the previous slides. And the network therefore consisted of 28 linkages. Now, this network was again found to be moderately cohesive, where each partner is interacting with only 3 others. So it helped us to understand which are the most connected partners and which are the ones who are still outlying or probably less interacting with the other initiatives or the partners. Then the highly connected actors, as already discussed, came out to be research organizations, especially the universities, which had high weighted in degree, which means that there were more partners or organizations which are actually reaching out to these organizations for any information or gaining any insights. Now, partnership within the CGI centers, as already talked about, had these 14 nodes with 91 linkages. And regarding the engagement of these partners in various stages, it was found that nearly 40% of the respondents were engaging, or 40% of the respondents from different initiatives are engaging in the implementation stage, in the piloting stage. Only 30% were engaging in the conception or design stage, and 18% in the diffusion or deployment stage. Move on to the next. Okay, so there was a bipartite analysis which was done of the external internal partners. Take on to the next slide, which showcased that the network had 22 nodes and 112 connections. An average degree of the network was found to be 10, which was again moderately, there was a moderate connectivity between the partners and the CGI centers. A network density of 0.48 indicated that there is a 48% chance of potential connections that were realized. So of the various connections which have been established, or the partners are trying to establish with one another, only 48% of them were actually actualized on ground. And this suggested a need for stronger collaboration in order to boost accountability, learning, and return on investments. Key insights emerged in terms of opportunity for CGI centers to promote cross connections between these external partners and increase network cohesions. Next slide. Okay, so this is the portal that probably you can log on to. You can scan this code and read about the entire full report, which is available online. Next slide.
And with this, we'll give floor to Bia.
Now we give
Bia
floor to
coming
Bia.
next. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you, colleagues. One more very different type of presentation of not independent evaluative work, but of course, equally important. Thank you, Bia. Go ahead.
Thanks, Svetlana, and thanks everyone for the questions in the chat. I think they're really good starting points for a discussion as soon as I show you these brief case studies as well. As Svetlana said, this was a little bit of a different approach that also used social network analysis, but on a different application and on different types of data. So the 2 examples that I'm going to show you today were assessments of where we were trying to understand the influence and the reach of 2 CGIAR science programs. The first one was the research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security called CCAFS. And you can read we have a peer-reviewed paper that was published on this evaluation that you can access, and we'll share the presentation later. You can go have a look if you want for the detailed methodology and how we created the data sets and so on, because here I'm only going to show you just a very short snapshot of the social network analysis approach that we used. So next slide, please. Just as a very quick intro on what is CCAFS. It was a program that was implemented by CGIAR. It ended in 2022, but it was a very long program that was trying to marshal the science and the expertise of CGIAR and its partners to implement climate smart agriculture overall. And I won't go into too much detail about the program itself, but it also intended to position CGIAR to play a major role in the processes of climate adaptation and mitigation, and to achieve food security through climate smart agriculture. One of and for the SNA component, what really matters to us here is that a key element of CCAFs was the establishment of strategic, broad-based global partnerships with different research institutions, with different government bodies in the countries where the program was implemented, as well as civil society and the private sector. Next. So the purpose of this particular evaluation was to assess how CCAFs influenced and motivated different actors to tackle climate change through CSA, and to understand how CCAFs also contributed to shaping discourses, policies, and institutional change to enable large-scale climate-smart agriculture adoption. Next slide. The main reason for us to develop this approach is that we found that a couple of gaps in the traditional monitoring of these types of this type of influence. So CCAFs had, of course, a very robust monitoring and evaluation framework where it was tracking the different policies, the different investments that were informed by CCAF's research. So this was an indicator that was consistently monitored throughout the life of the program. But we felt that it was missing. It wasn't necessarily capturing the soft power processes of such a long-term, broad-reaching program. So how were the 10 years of CCAF's implementation helping shape different perceptions and narratives around CSA and around climate adaptation? How was the program building trust between scientists and policymakers? So how were we able to influence the policy landscape with our science? And how different social networks and the stakeholder capacities were strengthened over the life of the program. Next slide. So to address these gaps, we developed an approach that was based on a methodology called digital methods, where we considered online activities as proxies for public discourse and proxies for stakeholder engagement, considering that at the institutional level, most of the organizations and the actors that CCAFs was interacting with were very present online and were positioning themselves in different digital platforms. We wanted to see whether online narratives and relationships would help us understand how CCAFs was influencing the promotion of CSA. Next slide. So we developed this data-driven approach that we used different web sources and social media platforms to apply different techniques. So we were using text mining, we used hyperlink analysis, query analysis. We also conducted the traditional qualitative interviews, and the thing that interests us the most here today was the social network analysis component. And I will show you how we did that in just a second. But just to say that through this entire methodological approach, we saw that CCAFs did help inspire positive policy change around CSA and climate adaptation. It built a global CSA community, and it helped spark increased public interest in climate-smart agricultural practices. Next. So the analysis that we conducted was based on Twitter. So now, of course, Twitter is now called X, but when this analysis was done, it was still the original platform. And we were leveraging on a specific affordance of Twitter, where I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but when you post a tweet, you can tag somebody else, you can call someone to the conversation by mentioning that person in your tag. So we were leveraging on that specific feature of Twitter to identify how different actors that we were interested in, so the different CCAF stakeholders, how they were conversing, how they were interacting with each other, and how they were interacting specifically with CCAF's implementation institutions affiliated to CGIAR. So what we did is we focused on the official public profiles of CCAF strategic partners. So we mapped through different stakeholder conversations and through qualitative mapping, through leveraging also on the monitoring platforms, on the CCAF's monitoring platform, to identify all of the strategic partners for CCAFs. We mapped their presence on Twitter, on the Twitter platform, and then we extracted all of their tweets, all of their content, so their life of tweets and assessed the presence of CCAFs in partner conversations. We were trying to understand the role of CCAFs in these conversations. So what you see here in this in this figure on the slide, which you can't really tell what's going on there, but this is essentially the entire network of that we built based on 900 tweets coming from 63,000 accounts. So of course we had the initial data collection of CCAF's partners, but then these partners also mentioned several other people, and this is what we're representing on this network. We then, to identify what was going on in the center of that network, which is what really matters to us here, like who are the key central figures in this conversation about climate smart agriculture. We filtered the accounts that were mentioned at least 5 times in the conversations, and this helped us reduce the network to about 2,300 accounts that were connected 23,000 times. So essentially, whenever an account mentioned another, we have our 2 nodes. The nodes are the accounts, and the edges or the relationship is when an account mentions another in a tweet. So in the next slide, we can see this filtered network. And here, as I was mentioning earlier, the social network analysis representations, they are trying to also show us the distribution of the nodes within a network is also an important component. So here we apply what is called the force-directed algorithm to spatially distribute these nodes. And when we talk about force-directed algorithms, we are talking about a way to distribute the nodes, which will pull together nodes that are more closely related, so that they are, let's say, people that are talking to each other more, and they will pull apart nodes that are unrelated. And this helps us understand those dynamics. So who are the most prolific actors in the network? Who is closer to whom? Who is talking more, across the different groups? So what you see here is that the labels here, they're sized by their between-us centrality, which is essentially looking at, when we talk about between-us centrality, this is a network metric that represents how much a particular actor in the network or a particular node is bridging different nodes in the network. And we've also colored these nodes by clusters. So we identify communities that are talking more to each other, and then they are talking to the rest of the network. What we see here is that generally, thanks, Svetlana. So what we see here, just as a quick note on the distribution of the nodes, is that the green and brown nodes are international development institutions and also large news media outlets. There's a cluster of brown. The brown cluster is mostly representing CGIAR research centers. And then we also have some geographic clusters of African and Latin American institutions, as well as academic institutions in purple. The main Twitter account that we were interested in looking at is CGIAR Climate, which was the account that was tweeting CCAF's related content, and we can see it there in orange on the bottom right of the network. It's positioned among our key international development players, and it's when we size it for between-us centrality, we see that it is an important connector between the diverse actors in our network. Then the next slide now. Thanks, Svetlana. The final analysis that we did was to plot an ego network. So when we isolate all of the different CCAF's related accounts, so the CGIAR centers and the different CGIAR thematic Twitter accounts, we then isolate those, and we map only we filter the network to only look at the relationships between those accounts and the other accounts mentioned in the network. We see that CGIAR accounts are connected to another 900 nodes, about 900 nodes within that large partner network. And this network then includes both accounts that CCAFs has mentioned, but also different people that mentioned CCAFs and CGIAR center accounts. And what we see here is that CCAFs is positioned among some of the key actors in the development space, and it plays a central role in bridging actors. We see here that there is a relationship with a lot of the key players in both climate adaptation and in the international development sphere. So the next slide is just to show then an iteration of this process where we conducted a similar approach to map climate security narratives among a different research program, a more recent research program called CGIAR Research Initiative on Climate Resilience. And we were looking specifically at a work package within this this program or this initiative that focused on the topic of climate security. So essentially understanding any linkages between climate change and peace and security. And we wanted to understand, following this approach, also how much the work package on climate security helped to disseminate and drive the agenda around, linking climate change with conflict, peace, and security. So the next slide is just a quick. Let's see if we can get to the next. Yeah, so again, just repeating what I just said, we were using the same approach that we developed for CCAFs. We again used the content disseminated on the web. So here we were looking at social media again, as well as websites. And we used the network analysis to understand partner engagement with with CGIAR in the context of climate security. So next slide, please. So how did we map the partners that we were interested in looking? We wanted to, we consulted with the different regional leads in the climate program, and they identified the key partnerships that they developed over the life of the program in the 5 countries where Climber was implemented. We identified 114 different partners from these countries. From those partners, we found that 107 of them had their own websites, and that 104 were interacting on X, so previously Twitter, currently X. And here you can see the distribution. It's okay, you can move to the next slide. Thanks, Svetlana. So just as how the data set was created and the data was processed, we scraped the tweets from these from 134 profiles, because of course, as you know, the same institution can have several different profiles. And we collected data between January 2019 and September 2024. So we were interested in the period of time prior to Climber and then during the development and implementation of the Climber program. We collected a total of about 630,000 tweets. And then we filtered those tweets which contained those mentions so that we can look at those relationships, and we filtered it down to 88,000 tweets containing about 15,000 accounts mentioned. Within those accounts, the ones that were related to CGIAR and to the CGIAR Climber program, so the central CG account, CGIAR Climate, and then Biodiversity, the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT, which was the main implementer of Work Package 2. We found that they were mentioned in about 6,300 tweets. And then we wanted to look at those mentions and look at those relationships. Of course, in this evaluation, again, we applied other approaches to also assess the content of the tweets. But here, I'm only showing you that small piece on the social network analysis. So in the next slide, you can see. There we go. So these are the networks that we assessed, and also there is a report that is publicly available in the CGIAR repository that you can check out. I'm happy to share a link here in the chat once we finish this presentation. But the 3 networks that you see here, the big network on the bottom left is the entire network of 15,000 accounts that were mentioned in the conversations, also colored by these different communities that are identified through a modularity algorithm, and then we see here a small filtering of the network when we look at all of the CGIAR accounts and who they are interacting with, and then an even more focused snapshot looking specifically at CGIAR Climate, which is the main Twitter account that we are interested in, and who they were interacting with. And the idea here is to map whether CGIAR and the Climber program was engaging with the key stakeholders that were also talking about climate security in the Twitter, of course, in the social media space, in the Twitter ecosystem, and whether CGIAR was effectively engaging with these institutions at the discursive level to identify whether there was any gaps, also any key partners that were talking about climate security that we weren't interacting with, and this could help us strengthen our partnership development and strengthen the implementation of the program. To make those connections or to strengthen the connection between our science and the different actors operating in the climate security space. This is my last slide. I'll just finish here by saying that just as a technical, a very small technical point, there is the program that we use to plot these networks is an open source program called Gephi, and I will type the name here in the chat as soon as we are done. And a lot of these network metrics can be calculated through the Gephi software, as well as these different algorithms that help us distribute and spatialize the nodes in the network visualization. So one of the main, I think one of the main enablers of social network analysis in evaluation these days is also the availability of good software that can support the development, the implementation of SNA, as well as the analysis and the interpretation of the results. So I think that's it for me. I'll stop here and I'll hand over to Shweta, who will just make some concluding remarks on SNA for evaluation. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bia, and thanks for bringing in forth that the software is now available. There are many open source software that are available, and the most, I would say, user friendly of all is Gephi. Yeah. Okay. So understanding, I hope you now must have got a flair of the fact that SNA can be applicable to all sizes, from local to global, from capturing narratives and interactions on a platform to evaluating the projects and the partnerships that are existing within the project and how communications are happening within the project. Now, so it's clear that we can understand a plan, create another plan, probably to support an existing network, or rather create a new network and then monitor and assess a program or a project through regular M&E approaches. Now, so therefore, to undertake any social network analysis exercise to assess changes over time, we can actually, such an analysis can actually help an organization determine the cause and impact of of these changes on network performances. And thus, SNA is actually a very powerful approach to understand relationships and dynamics within social systems, whether it is communities, organizations, or research networks. However, there are defined challenges and limitations that we as researchers or development practitioners are navigating. And for example, accessibility of network data is one of the biggest challenge. Then quality of network data that we get through. Also, the fact that networks themselves are very dynamic in nature, and probably, actually leading, navigating those networks and looking at the granularity of those networks can be many times very challenging. Then often when we try to use SNA, there have been, and I would say, can say an attempt to rather oversimplify the network dynamics. So there are defined ethical considerations that we need to keep in mind. And hence, just to end, we would want to just say that in order to ensure an apt use of social network analysis in various stages of development project cycle, there are certain things that one needs to keep in mind. First, the SNA can be applied under the supervision of a trained SNA expert only. In case if this is not feasible, it is always better that we have a capacity building of the staff, which who can actually then decipher the context of a given evaluation, look at the feasibility of undertaking SNA, and then draft or design the data collection tools in accordance with the needs of the project. Then secondly, care should be taken in defining the scope of SNA. So the very first thing is that we do a feasibility assessment in the beginning stage of a program or a project. Then thirdly, SNA can be done online or as well as offline. The tools for data collection involve regular surveys, interviews, your focus group discussions, tracking the traffic over an online network. But the tools that are used to collect this data for SNA must be pilot tested in order to remove any ambiguity or unforeseen biasness. Then also, the due care should be taken to avoid any oversimplification of the entire process when we attempt to carry out SNA to evaluate any intervention. And lastly, SNA can actually be used, interestingly, also at the planning stage as well as towards the end stage, that means the evaluation stage. And it can help you to recognize the pathways of communication, assess the strengths of bonds that are existing between different players and stakeholders. So actually, SNA is a potential tool which can be used and has to be used with a word of caution. But yes, it is extremely beneficial in helping analyze and visualize the networks that are existing, both offline as well as online networks. Therefore, deliberate and sincere efforts can be made actually on part of we as evaluators or as commissioners of evaluation to ensure that there is a participatory use of SNA. And this will actually be very important in order to avoid utilization of merely quantitative, tool, merely using SNA as a quantitative tool for visualization, and will refrain from making the whole, the process of evaluation heavily top down. And I think that's one of the last points that I would want to stress. Over to you, Bia or Svetlana, if you want to add on anything if I've just missed.
No, thank you, Shweta. Thank you, Bia. Maybe there will be probably feedback and questions, and I cannot see the questions, so I trust that Bia and Shweta, you will be able to just freely take them on. And of course, others, guests and participants are welcome to unmute themselves and speak up and engage. That would also help put faces with names. Thank you.
Thanks, Svetlana. Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions here in the chat, and then there's also a question in the Q&A. So I'll just go through here. The first one from Chloe asking how we calculate the degree and the graph density. So I'll just give a very quick answer, and then of course Shweta, please jump in and complement. But to calculate the degree and the graph density, we are essentially looking at the degree is how much a particular node is connected to other nodes in the network, and the overall degree is both connections that are, let's say, coming in, so from a node to another, and also from the coming out of that node. So when we're looking at different types of networks that are either that are directional, and you can calculate those. Let's say by hand, depending on the size of your network, or as we suggested, you can use a social network analysis software to that will help you plot, that will help you calculate those metrics based on the inputs that you use. So you need to essentially, let's say you have a table with your connection. So you have your source and your target, and you're making those connections. You upload or you input those into the program, and it will help you calculate the metrics. The graph density is essentially how much nodes are connected amongst themselves. So it goes from 0 to 1, where in a network with 0 density means that there's absolutely no connection between nodes, and a network that is the maximum density is when every node is connected to every node. So you're looking at here, when you're talking about graph density, is you're looking at how closed or how dispersed a network is. And again, you can get help calculating these metrics depending on the size of your network if you use dedicated software for the analysis. Shweta, I don't know if you want to add anything to this question, or we can move to Edwin's
I think
question.
it's great, but just that's actually very well explained, Bia. So just to give you a very quick or a very simplistic understanding of how a degree can be calculated, what is degree indeed is, it's the number of direct connections a person, or an entity has in a network. So think of it probably in terms of how many friends somebody will have. So a high degree would actually mean that someone is very well connected, and a low degree would mean that the person has few direct links with the other person. So as simple as that. And it is a great actually, or probably I would say the first indicator that is often used in SNA. Yeah.
Great. So the next question from Edwin, asking what we see as the main limitations of using SNA in evaluation, and how can evaluators address these challenges to ensure credible and actionable results. I think Shweta addressed this question. I think just to reinforce that, I think is really important to know, to have the right research question that can be answered through SNA, because SNA doesn't respond to every single question. And I think the correct framing is very important, so that you can build, you can collect the right data, you can construct the right networks, and then you can correctly interpret your results in the context of your research question. I think this is the main point, I would say, for the correct application of SNA in any evaluation. And then we have a question here from George. Whether there's a use cases of SNA in real-time support for emergency responses. Yes, I can give you a direct references now. I don't have them at hand, but there are studies that look at SNA in the context of emergency response, specifically looking at how, let's say, for example, in the social media context, which is where I'm more familiar with, looking at how first responders or how communication is done to people that to people in disaster or in emergency situations. So looking at how the information networks are disseminated and also how people share their lived experiences or the situations that they're experiencing on the ground and the dissemination of those of that information. But if you're interested, you can reach out to us. My email is there, and I'm happy to provide you with some solid references that you can check out. I don't know, Shweta, if you're aware of any studies in this field, maybe we can
No,
also respond.
same here, Bia. There have been a couple of studies, and I think one of them is mentioned in the methods note as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
there
so
is a
probably
case
you
study in
can
the
check
book.
out. Yeah,
Great.
there is one
Another
interesting question by Pathik. Yeah, is there
Yeah, go
training
ahead.
you
Go
would
ahead.
recommend attending? Yeah. So yes, actually, we would probably suggest that before using SNA in any of your projects or any of your for any of your studies, it is important that you understand the conceptual, you have a conceptual understanding of SNA, B, how to utilize or how to rather collect data. And the third part comes in how to actually feed that data to have correct visualizations and analyze those visualizations. So yes, there is some sort of training that should be there before you attempt SNA in any of your projects or programs. Yeah, would you want to suggest any specific ones?
No, I think because Gephi is an open source program, if you go on
Yes,
their websites, they will have loads of resources there. They have
they have
user guides, they have
tutorials.
a lot of
Yeah.
things. So to use the software itself, I think it's quite useful to just to leverage on the resources in Gephi's website. But as Shweta is saying, I think is also important to build some capacity in terms of the entire process of developing an SNA analysis. And I think I think that there's probably different courses out there, or you can our methods
Yes,
note, I think, is a good starting point
yes, that's a
to
great
then get
resource to
additional
begin with.
information.
Yes, to begin with, that's a great resource. Then probably you can actually hop onto other online courses that are available. And we
Exactly.
are any case there to handhold. Yeah.
Yes. There is a question here in the Q&A, Shweta. Do you wanna take that on? And the question is from Yuki. When collecting primary data, how do you address the challenge of some or most respondents only reporting the bare minimum connections, which can compromise the accuracy or completeness of the data set?
So, well, yes, actually, it is a challenge, no doubt, because yes, many a times you do have, people who have very fewer connections or who have actually, but again, I would suggest that probably we will then have to go back to the whole universe, the entire sample, keep collecting a little more, or probably filtering out rather, and then choosing which, what kind of analysis would you really want to do with those I would say minimum connections that emerge. So there are different kind of analysis. There could be in degree, out degree, then you have weighted analysis, then you have bipartite analysis. We can actually see how best we can utilize those responses within the study, and if need be, collect even more data. Yeah.
I think it's also just to complement on what you said, Shweta, I think also is really important to think about whether SNA can be incorporated into project design so that you're benchmarking also the dynamics and the
Yes,
connections
the
that you have from the beginning, and then it's easier, let's say, or not easier, but it's better to then look at whether these networks evolve and how they evolve over the life of a project. Even if you're getting the bare minimum, you would still be able to see changes, over the course of time and project implementation. So this is also a way that you can try to deal with this challenge, is trying to incorporate SNA right from the beginning of project design as a key element of monitoring and evaluation right from the start.
yeah, absolutely.
The second question here from Yuki, thanks for this, is about social media data. So I will take that on. So whether we've tried sourcing from multiple platforms. Yes, that's a really good question. Yes, we have done research in other platforms. We've used Facebook, we've used Telegram, but the main issue is that not all platforms have that network, the network nature of Twitter or of X, of the X platform, where you're able to actually mention and where you can plot those relationships in a network. Because to be able to conduct a SNA on social media, you need to be able to map those relationships, and they need to be present as an affordance or as a feature of the data that you collect, right? So with Twitter, that's very easy. You have your mention, and then you plot, the author of the message and the profile that is mentioned. With Facebook and with Telegram, for example, or LinkedIn, though sometimes you're able to collect those mentions because you're also able to tag people in a content. But depending on how the data is collected, and this is also the other issue with working with social media data, is that not all data is able to be, we're not able to collect all data through APIs. So sometimes we need to rely on scraping data, and then you don't always get the hyperlinks and the link and the technical affordances that you need to construct the networks. But in the cases of the other research that we've done, not always just focusing on SNA, but also looking at content, we do map the presence of different institutions, partners, or topics in different platforms, and then we try to select the platform that is most relevant for the context for, as you said, I mean, in some countries, what platforms are we talking about, where people mostly engaging with, but also depending on the research question that we're trying to answer. So looking at institutional relationships, for example, LinkedIn is very good, but when we're trying to understand maybe individual conversations, maybe we need to go down to the Facebook level. But the key thing here is also, in terms of ethical research, is only looking at publicly available data, and a lot of these very granular conversations are happening at the private sphere of these social media platforms, and we're not accessing those. So that's also a key limitation to keep in mind when talking about social media data and social media analysis. Right, so I think at this point we've answered all the questions that were already posted here in the chat and in the Q&A. I don't know if anyone else wants to make any comments or ask any more questions. Please feel free to open your mic, and or we can open the mic for you and hear your insights.
Thank you, ladies, for intense presentation and giving a flair. I like that word, flair. Thank you for amazing questions. Nobody's brave enough to ask more. Chat, sorry, because I couldn't access chat while they was sharing, so let's make sure that. Thank you. Last case study, thanks for sharing. And I think the questions were very relevant, were very practical. So thank you everybody. And we really are glad the question showed that, there is an interest and the way forward, as Shweta presented in her last slide. And as a commissioner of evaluations and independent evaluation office in our commissioner to the evaluation teams, I do want to make a plea for this method. We have found it very useful, and it brings, when triangulated, evidence brings very interesting findings and definitely strengthens information around partnerships. And I also included the link to the report that we recently published where SNA data were integrated. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think we are done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks for your question.